And a good Monday evening. Welcome into Time Out here on TVNB. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about the St. John Flames. Stu McDonald joins us, so we hope you come back and join us as well. Hope you had a great holiday weekend with friends and family. Thank you for tuning in tonight. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk some hockey. Chief Operating Officer for the St. John Flames, Stu McDonald, joins us. Stu, thanks for dropping by.
My pleasure.
And, of course, our old favorite, Bruce McDonald, sitting in his warm and comfortable chair. Nice to have you here, Bruce.
Good to be back, Jim.
Stu, I guess we'll get right to it. The obvious question on a lot of Flames fans' minds is swept in 3 straight games by Lowell in the first round of the playoffs. Just your feelings on the series?
Well, I think, obviously not the end result that we were looking for, but the boys played hard through it. The one thing I think that maybe you lose sight of a little bit is how close all the teams were in the standings this year. Both ourselves, Quebec, Lowell, and even Providence, who came over from the other division to join us in the playoffs. I mean, all were within about 5 or 6 points. So I think even if, whether it was 3 straight one way or another, I think it'd be tough to call it an upset, but it's a great series. Lowell played hard and deserved the victory, no question. Luongo had a great series and goal for them. But our guys played, I was down in Lowell for the last game, and our guys played hard to the last second, and just wasn't meant to be this year.
And a lot of people look at the fact that the Islanders got booted out of the playoffs so early that gave Lowell maybe a little chance to throw those extra bodies in there, maybe a little fresher lineup, and they came out flying against the Flames both games.
Yeah, and I guess you can look back, it's almost the reverse of last season, where we were fortunate, we faced up with them, and we were sort of the lower place team and had a chance to sweep them and did that, and I guess just a little bit of revenge for Lowell this year.
Were you a little disheartened? First two games, of course, played here at Harper Station, and both crowds didn't even tally up to 5,000. That's got to be disappointing because, I mean, as we well know and as all the fans know, it's always an ongoing battle lately, the last couple of years, to get the fans in the seats and make sure that they stay there.
Yeah, I guess, it sounds strange to say it, but it really wasn't a lot off what our expectations were for the games. I think there's a couple of elements you've got to look at. One is that the entire American Hockey League, along with pretty much all of minor league hockey, has a real tough time drawing in the first round and a half of the playoffs. And we were actually, I think, one of in the top 4 or 5, if you can believe that, in attendance during the first round, or after at least our first couple home games. But part of the challenge we had is you're playing on a Wednesday and Thursday night, which we don't draw a grade on at any time in the season. We didn't have a lot of time, advance time, to sell tickets. We really hadn't confirmed our playoff position until about 5 or 6 days previous.
Sure.
And I think people look at it and say, geez, the Calder Cup is meaningful to us. But like when we went to the finals 2 years ago, that it's mid-second round or third round before it really starts hitting into a bit of a frenzy. So we obviously would have loved to have seen a full building, but it sure wasn't any indication of where we're going down the road. I think, if anything, it just sort of confirmed the challenge our whole league has to do in getting people in for that first round.
Now, the burning question that everybody wants to know, of course, you probably can't answer half these questions, but I'm going to throw them out on the table. Rick Vaive, is he back for another season next year behind the bench?
Well, Calgary's got an option on Rick's contract, and I think right now, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a domino effect of seeing what takes place in Calgary from first and foremost from their GM's position up there, and I think from there they'll take a look, and I would think Rick would get consideration from a coaching position in Calgary, and I think that's probably about as far as they would look at it at this point. I would think they'll want their GM, head coach, and assistant coaches in place there before they decide what direction they want to go here.
Sure. Bruce, I'll get you involved in this side of the conversation. Calgary, of course, cleans house. Al Coates is gone. Brian Sutter is gone from the head coaching position. If you look at who's available out there right now, who do you think is the best man to be behind the bench? We'll start with behind the bench first.
Well, that's a hard one. We talked about that a little bit before we went on air, and we threw some names around then. I think you need to get someone a little bit younger. There's a lot of veteran guys around that are available now, but they're from the old school, a lot of these guys. The Flames have a lot of young players, and they want to develop these guys and bring them up, and so you need someone probably, I don't know, a rookie or not, but someone like a younger type of coach. Now, there's some some few names that we discussed, and I can't remember them.
Well, I think Ted Nolan is
Ted Nolan
is a name that needs
we
great
talked about Ted Nolan,
consideration. I mean, here's a guy that did amazing things with Buffalo when he coached there, and for whatever reason, secret squirrel stuff going on in the league, Ted was kind of alienated and pushed aside, and there were a couple of coaching positions that came up after he got released from Buffalo and was just kind of tossed aside, never really given a good hard consideration or a look at. But wouldn't you think, I mean, if he wants to get back in the league, Calgary, of course, on a tight budget, as well as the Edmonton Oilers and most of the Canadian clubs, would Ted not be the obvious decision, just his coaching ability, and you'd be able to get him for a rock-bottom bargain price, I would think?
Well, I know he's come out, I think it was last week or the week before, and said, you know,
he wanted it.
Money is not an issue. Just, I guess, give me a car to get around town in, and I'm in there for you. There's no question about that. So I don't think that's going to be the issue from his standpoint. I think the biggest thing from a coaching standpoint, again, be going back to, much as you like to say, here's a name for a coach, that'll really have a big bearing from who the general manager is of the club and what direction the team wants to go. I think, you know, they got an unbelievable amount out of the players in Calgary in the last couple of years, regardless of where they stood at the end of the season. And I think Brian Sutter deserves a lot of credit for that.
Sure.
Obviously, not everyone liked his coaching style from an entertainment aspect, or from, I mean, even there's people talking about his coaching led to more injuries on the club because of how tough they practiced with their club. But I think he was probably the right guy at the right time for the players Calgary had coming up. The question is now, you know, do you want to change your system slightly? Do you want to follow in that? And then it's a matter of, okay, which coaches are going to fit into that role? I would think if Calgary had an option, I would think they would love to have someone with a name like Ted Nolan's, maybe not necessarily his, but someone of that profile, because they're also at the same time in obviously a critical ticket sales time period out in Calgary.
Absolutely. And
they're looking for things to sort of reignite the fan base out there.
How shocked were you when word came down that, you know, they basically cleaned house, Al Coates was gone, Sutter was gone? You know, were you totally floored, or was it, I sort of could see that coming?
No, I think we all knew that, and I think, you know, Coatesy and Nick Polano and Sutter knew that some changes were inevitable there, but I think what really surprised us was that it was, you know, right across the board. That both the coaching and general managers' roles have disappeared, and really, from a hockey operations standpoint now, there's about a half dozen scouts, and then their hockey operations secretary and their hockey administrator, Mike Burker, out there, and that's basically it. Now, obviously, they're going to try to get someone in quick, but that's, I think, the thing that surprised us the most, that it was a sort of as wide a sweep as it was.
Do you look at any aspirations for you, maybe making the trek up the highway, going out to Calgary? Or?
Well, I think they want someone a little bit better hockey background than me.
No, but if somebody moves up, I mean, that's normally how it works, and you know better than I. If somebody moves up in the organization, that means there's an opening in the ranks somewhere else. Any aspirations? Are you comfortable here? Will you be back next season?
Yeah, I think, I mean, from my standpoint, my involvement with the club is really from a business perspective, and we've sort of split the sort of the simple way to explain it. We split the club pretty much down the center with Calgary. Calgary looks after all the hockey operations, which is getting the players for us here, the coaches, trainer, assistant coaches, and then our local owners, who I work for and the rest of our staff work for, we look after all the business operations. So we're really just looking at sort of the Calgary Flames half of the equation, that some changes are taking place. Now, I think the names most likely to be more affected by this would be, you know, Rick Vive and Tom Watt, who might be able to, you know, take a look at some of the opportunities that come up, and I would think both would get serious consideration there.
All right.
Okay.
Basically, all I have to say about Brian Sutter is I know a lot of the players weren't happy with Sutter up there. I mean, he brought guys up like Martin St. Louis and didn't play them properly. He had them on a checking line, and Nat Domicelli never got a shot up there, realistically. I mean, in our opinion, down here, looking up, it looked like unless you were 6'4" and 240 pounds, Brian Sutter didn't want you. So I'm hoping that whoever takes over there gives some of these skilled guys a chance to go up and play, like St. Louis and guys like that. So,
yeah, I think I talked to Martin. He was down right at the end of the Lowell series, and got a chance to talk to him, and you know how he enjoyed the experience, and we talked a little bit about, you know, Brian's position from playing under him, and he was, you know, very positive of the experience and how it impacted on his career. Because he did give me a chance. He says, you had to work your tail off every single day. He says, you know, I've definitely not seen a coach that demands that much, both in practice and game. He says, but it makes you a better player. There's no question. And I think from Martin's standpoint, as much as he dominated here in the American Hockey League and was definitely all of our favorites when he was down here, that his role probably would have to change in the National Hockey League regardless where he goes. I would think because of his speed and his tenacity, that he probably would fit into that third or fourth line checking role, and in that maybe because he's just a little bit more on the pure goal scorer line, that he just needed to find an organization who was looking for that, and had the right guys to fit with him. And I think he's probably found that a little bit better in Atlanta.
Well, I guess it's a bit of a pet peeve for us as fans down here, because it sort of reminds me a lot of when Andrew McKim, who comes from St. John, of course, never got a shot with Boston in the same circumstances. He was put in the third line there. He played 39 games one year and got 1 goal in 1 shift a period. Yeah, I agree probably with what you're saying there, but I feel like these guys should be given a shot at least to do what they did in the minor leagues, see if they can be a big-time scorer or not.
And so much of it, there's so many careers out there that have impacted one way or the other, but it really comes down to the old line of timing's everything.
Yes.
If you're in, you could have that same skill set and, say dominate here in St. John and go to 5 different NHL teams and, be given the same opportunity, but because of the players who were with you at that particular point, because of the coaching style, because of the injuries that happened to take place just after you got up there, all those things have a tremendous impact. And I'm sure as we watch the Stanley Cup playoffs now, there's guys that are, our fans here in St. John will look, say, I remember when he came into town, or maybe when he played for Flames, and there's no way he should be playing in the NHL because so-and-so was much better.
Exactly.
And he's never had a chance, but a lot of it is just right place at the right time, and working hard and really earning that opportunity. And it's not really fair for all the players, but there's a few guys up there you look at who've had tremendous careers that, I'm sure you look at one point and said, geez, he had a tough time making it in the AHL.
We don't like to name names here, but there's 2 guys that come to mind right away. They're playing for the Colorado Avalanche, who is Chris Dingman and Sammy Helenas. Now those guys, I think the fans like them here, but let's be honest, neither one could even skate at the AHL level, and now they're up there playing really a regular shift in the National Hockey League.
You bet.
Because of their size.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously not a point where any NHL team's going to carry a guy if they don't think he can play there, but they're much more specific roles there, especially when you get into playoffs, and they can carry a couple extra bodies that maybe they'll sit out for 5 or 6 games in a row, and they might be carrying them on the roster just to put some pressure on the guys who are on. We obviously don't have that luxury in the AHL, but in the NHL you can, and that sometimes can be frustrating for our fans when they see one of our players get called up to Calgary, and he'll be in the press box for 3 games and then gets returned. And obviously you look at it and say, geez, that's not fair. If they're going to call him up, at least play him. But from the coach's perspective, he might have a player who's can contribute significantly, but just isn't quite doing it at that point. And the threat of having someone that's ready to take his job might be enough to push him back to get contributing a little bit more significant to the team. That guy's done his job. Back to St. John and to contribute here, and so there's so many other elements that you start looking at up there, and really when you get down to it, I think that back to Ted Nolan, where he had so much success was as a motivator. That's such a big role in coaching in the NHL today.
I have one more question. I think one of the problems in St. John here now is, and with the fan support, I believe, is we don't have any natural rivals here in the city. When we first came in the league, we had PEI, we had Moncton, we had Cape Breton, and so on. I think that's where the Quebec League has an advantage over us right now. Do you think there's any chance of having any sort of realignment in this league so we can have, I know there's really no one close to us, but is there any chance of doing that and trying to get things so we can have some rivals in our own backyard here?
Well, I think when I look at it, Bruce, from the couple years that I've been here, and that obviously, when I first got here, like I said, geez, it must have been great those first couple of years with all those maritime rivalries. But if I look last year, I guess 2 seasons ago now, when Fredericton was in the league, and I look at our average attendance for Fredericton versus other teams, and I look what we drew against Fredericton for their final series ever, and it really wasn't any more significant than Lowell or Portland coming in.
That's true.
And as much as, I tell you one thing, from a budget standpoint, travel-wise, we would love to have that maritime division because we're now spending US dollars and going on 4 or 5 day trips rather than being back home at 2 in the morning on a bus. And but I think part of it is you get into that and you look and say, how much is it really going to impact attendance? And what really hit home to me, I think, was in that playoff round, the second round last year, where we're drawing 4,000 on weekend crowd. That just the fans were saying it's great that it's Fredericton, it's great we've got this rivalry, but that's not really what's making the difference in me going. And we've really become like a lot of American cities, I guess, and when you look at the long-term survival in the club. And what's important for us now is what we saw this year is those Friday and Saturday nights. I mean, our game has become great, affordable family entertainment at the highest possible level outside the National Hockey League, but it's still a Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday game. And you look in the regular season, our Wednesdays and Thursdays don't draw tremendous numbers. And I think that's probably more a factor than anything else. If given the choice, we'd obviously love to still have Fredericton and Moncton, but I don't think it's as serious as sort of a threat to the long-term lifeline of the club as some people do out there.
I guess the way I'm looking at it, though, is from a fan's point of view. I like to be able to go on a road trip and go to Moncton or go to Fredericton. I think it will take time to build something like that up, and I'll be honest, I can't see that ever happening again in this league, but that's sort of where I was going with that question more from, as a fan, I can jump in my car and go to Moncton and root my team on and so on. Like in the Quebec League now, you can do that. The Moncton fans can go to Halifax, and in the AHL, you get it down in the Massachusetts area. You can go to how many different centers there within an hour or 2 hours. So.
Yeah, and I think...
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. We'll just hold that thought. We've got to take a break. The first half, hey, we're flying right by. We've got lots of questions left for Stu, and we'll try to keep Bruce in line. Make sure you come back and join us.
Hey, Mr. Ricky. Boys, I want you to meet someone. Outstanding athlete, the former second lieutenant in the United States Army, and your new second baseman, Jackie Robinson.
Hi, gentlemen.
Et maintenant, va d'emblée pour you. And now batting for the Royals, le deuxième but, the second baseman, Jackie Robinson. Quatrième manche, fourth inning.
Record numbers of cheering Montrealers helped Jackie Robinson break baseball's color bar that year. He never forgot the city that launched his journey to baseball's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I make television, but I like to watch a lot of movies. And I think digital cable is perfect if you like to watch a lot of movies. You can actually tailor your package for yourself. And there's so much choice, it's unbelievable. We've all done it. We've all rented a movie from the video store that we didn't even want to watch because it was the only thing there. You didn't watch it. You forgot it at home for a day. You spent $10 for a movie you didn't even watch. I think the digital image is great. The sound is great. It's a major improvement over, the way we used to watch TV 5 years ago.
Stu, we'll get back to the question, I guess, that everybody always asks and has been asking over the past couple of years. Are we geared up and ready to go for next season? We're already planning for that?
We definitely are, and I've had some great signs actually already with regards to ticket sales for next season. We went through, and they're just sort of little things. You look for trends of, how positive a summer is it going to be ticket sales wise and season tickets. But we went through this year with a season ticket base that was 400 lower than the previous season, and actually sold more playoff packages to our season ticket holders this year than we did last season, which I think was a great sign.
Sure.
And we've had a lot of those people have said, look, just roll my money over on my account. We're definitely coming back. Good. So we'll be out probably fairly hard in the marketplace during the month of May on our renewal deadline of May 31st. But we're all pretty optimistic that, one, that we can build that season ticket base, and we don't have to build a substantial amount. I think this time last year we were talking about we probably need the season ticket base of 2,800 to make it work.
Sure.
But we had seen the casual sales, the walk-up sales in this city, from year one just continue to decline. And the big thing this year was our paid walk-ups were up 500 a game this year. And so we've come across some new things, scheduling, obviously being a big impact on that, group sales that have really come out and been able to make an impact. Youth tickets for families have made a big difference. And so we've looked now and said, geez, we've got a lot of work to do, and it's a leap of faith to sort of plan on having those increased walk-ups each year, but at least we've proven it can be done here. And now our challenge is to say, let's increase our season ticket base just a little bit. We're a little over 1,800 now, and if we can get, maybe even just up under 2,000, I think would be enough to say, yes, we can make it work again the next year and allow it to keep building and building. So we've seen some real positive signs to date. I think most of the fans we've talked about, everyone's disappointed, obviously, that we didn't go farther in the playoffs. But I think most people are satisfied that with all the injuries in Calgary, all things considered, wasn't that bad of a year this year.
Now, one article in the paper and, just stories and people talking around town said that Moncton was more family orientated than St. John was for drawing people into the stands. Now the Coliseum's been full since the Wildcats got on their playoff run, but the Wildcats went through their struggle the first season they were here, and obviously it's always good to keep an eye on what your neighbors are doing. I'm sure you've taken a few trips up to Moncton to see what they're doing. Is there anything marketing-wise that they're doing that is stunningly different from what St. John is, and maybe that we should adopt one of their styles so that we can draw some more fans into the rink, or are you happy with the way things have progressed here?
Well, and obviously we're dealing from a little bit biased situation, but I guess the easiest way to look at it is when I came in here 2 years ago, I was really impressed with what this club had done from a marketing perspective from day one. And I would say, you know, in the last 7 years, this club is as solid a leader as there is from an entertainment standpoint as there is in the American Hockey League, and,
sure.
and put that up just against about almost any other team out there in hockey. And I've been to games in Moncton, been to games in Halifax, and I would say that you know, on any weekend night that it's as or more exciting in our building than it is there. There's a couple of differences obviously between us and Moncton.
Sure.
You know, from a well documented from a ticket price and concession price standpoint there. Although the other is that, you know, the club operates with a significantly different lease arrangement in their building, as does the KD Bathurst. And, you know, we're in a position here where we've got a lease with Harbour Station where, you know, we pay a significant amount to them during the year so that taxpayers don't end up funding the building. The deficit on Harbour Station is close to nil in arena terms. The same can't be said for Moncton and KD Bathurst. And so it's sort of different setups that way. Obviously, if our lease was significantly less, our ticket prices would be significantly less. It would mean everybody would be paying more in taxes, and we've always tried to stay away from that. So I think, you know, the only thing we can really judge is the feedback we can get from our fans, and it's been very positive this year. We had some significant increase in families and kids in the building throughout the year, and very positive feedback. And obviously, we're touring other buildings, not just in the AHL or junior, but all other leagues and other sports to say, okay, what can we borrow to make it more entertaining, a better value for the fans? And we get a lot of our great ideas from ticket holders who've been, geez, I was out at in Western States and watched a football game and they did this, and you should maybe try that. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. So we're always looking to get better, but from sitting down and saying, geez, you know, is there a team out there that's dramatically better in any league? I think in hockey today it's almost impossible, because just about every team is focusing a lot of attention on the off-ice entertainment aspect for when you walk into that building. And the other, I will say, St. John, obviously, your St. Johners know that we've probably got the premier building to watch.
Absolutely.
To watch, you know, non-NHL hockey in North America, and that makes a big impact as well.
Always see you floating around the building at the home games, talking to the fans, getting their input. Seeing what's the biggest, I don't want to say pet peeve, what's their biggest annoyance, I guess, when they're sitting there? Is there one particular thing as to, you know, why it was, you know, I mean, obviously, and I hate to use this word because it's been overused so much, the honeymoon is over with this team and the city and its fans, but is there one thing that keeps them away from the rink, like, I mean, or is it just a combination of things, like if the team gets on a losing streak or just whatever the case might be? What's the big thing that fans always say to you?
I think it's a combination. You know, people look at, obviously, as with any entertainment, cost is a factor for anybody.
Sure.
But I think we've gotten to a point where now, you know, we can't be all things to all people. We can't hit every market and say this is going to be, you know, within your budget to go to 30 or 40 games a year, regardless who you are in St. John. You couldn't do that in junior hockey. It's just, it's too costly a business to be able to do that.
Sure.
So what we try to do is say, how can we make this as affordable as possible for the vast majority of the families in the marketplace? And I think we've accomplished that. There's obviously people out there who say, geez, it's still too expensive for my family to go regularly. So for that, we come up, you know, with the 4 for 44 nights that allow them to go on a monthly basis to take it in, and have tried to react to that. I think there's obviously, from a hockey perspective, there's, in any American Hockey League city, you're going to have the frustration of your players sort of shuttling back and forth between you and your parent club.
Sure.
And that's always going to be a reality of the AHL. You know, if a guy is playing tremendous here, like Martin was or Nat was earlier in the season, you know that eventually he's going to get called up.
You bet.
And you know, we're no different than any other market. And I think that's the toughest thing when we go back to year one, that maybe was the one expectation that was sort of really outside of where people were looking to what they would get from the American Hockey League coming in. I talked to a lot of fans who said, geez, you know, when we get this team in here, these guys are going to be in here for, you know, probably want to live in the community and be here for 3 or 4 years and be full-time residents, and it's just not the reality. The reality is that our guys and every Lowell's players and Portland's players, they're in your market for one reason, and that's to make it to the NHL. Whether they're 20 or 35, they still have that desire, and that's why they're still playing pro hockey. And so I think over the course of the first 7 years, people have come to a much better realization of that, and the expectations are now that what we'd like to see, then knowing we're probably going to have them for maybe a year or 2 or 3, that we hope that they can move on to the NHL and have a great career that we can follow there, which would be, obviously, from a junior standpoint, you might have 1 or 2 players off your team. I look back to our team calendar shot back in October this year, and there's probably off that picture going to be 7 or 8 NHL regulars easily off the guys who were there at the start of the year. And there'll be a couple more again next year who are coming in new. So I think that's part of it is, you know, as the city sort of educated itself as to what the American Hockey League is. And I think St. John has said, you know what, this is what we want. We want the best quality hockey possible. That's not going to be the NHL. Because we're obviously too small of a market, but we can maintain an AHL team here. And I think that's where we've gotten to. And I think that's why we've seen this attendance number start rising again this season, that people are getting comfortable with who we are, what the product is, and with working on some new areas, we can start bringing more people in.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'll throw this question at you real quick. What do you expect from this team next season? Do you expect that, well, obviously you wanted to excel and exceed its expectations. One article in the newspaper this weekend said it's just a matter of time before St. John jumps on board the Quebec Major Junior bandwagon.
Yeah, that's what you get from a Moncton writer. And I think it's so apples and oranges, and it's really not a concern from our perspective. I think anyone who's gone to junior hockey and seen it over an extended period of time will realize it's 2 different games, and I don't think anyone in either side can argue that. And what we've always had in St. John are, going back to the senior hockey days, this city's grown up watching men play hockey.
Absolutely.
They haven't watched teenagers play hockey or paid to watch teenagers play hockey. And I think that's the difference, that St. Johners, they're different fans than they are in Moncton or Fredericton or Halifax. They want the best quality hockey possible. I don't think that's an issue. Our only issue is, can we maintain enough ticket sales to make this viable long term? And from our ownership group, from Calgary's perspective, and our office perspective, we think that's very viable.
Absolutely. Flip over to the NHL real quick. Who do you like to win the Cup? I know it's always tough. It's a hard
I'm changing
question.
my mind on a daily basis now, and after watching Dallas in the first round, they just kind of slept through the season a little bit as well as they played, and started looking at them and said, boy, if they get together, they can surprise a few teams. I really like what they've got. I picked New Jersey on the eastern side initially, long before it started, and I think both those 2 teams, I think it might be a bit of a sleeper year where one of the teams that maybe doesn't dominate all the way through, but just sort of keeps chugging along. It's going to be tough coming out of the West, though, with the good teams sitting out there.
Going to be a dogfight in the West, too. Appreciate the time very much.
Pleasure.
Wish you all the best next season. Bruce, always good to see you. Drive careful out on the road. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you have a great week. Don't eat too much chocolate, okay? And we'll see you next Monday at 7 o'clock.